That's part of the trip to Broseley pipe work.
The congregational chapel just behind you, and the congregational gravestone here. But prior to that, in the 17th century, it was a Quaker burial ground. So there's a plaque there commemorating that. Quakers in this area. In the 17th century, there was reference to these buildings being used as a cotton manufactory. Now, we haven't been able to delve any further and to get any more evidence of that, but that's quite interesting. But certainly in 1881, these works were converted into a pipe works by a chap called Roland Smitherman, who came from Netherton. So it was operating as a pipe works, one of 3 pipe works in the village that were operating, and this one was the last to continue. It was operating in 1957 when the last old pipe maker died, a chap called Harry Southern. His father was William Southern. Harry Southern died in 1957. Within a year or so, his 3 sons had closed the works. There wasn't a future for clay pipe making in the late 1950s. Obviously, cigarettes had taken over. So they locked up the doors and they left it. They went away, and it was pretty well abandoned for 31 years. So it's 1989 when Ironbridge Gorge Museum, which was set up at the time the new town of Telford, or Dawley New Town as it was called in those days, Telford, was being established, and they looked around and realised that this area, this Severn Gorge, the Ironbridge Gorge, was a rich and important historical area, rich of all the industrial development that took place in the area, in the Severn Gorge, with dried burdock leaves. If you dry them and rub them together and put them into a pipe and light them, they'll burn, and you'll get smoke and a flavour. I don't actually smoke, by the way, so it's just going on hearsay by this. It's a no smoking pipe factory. It's marvellous, absolutely. So a little bit of experimental archaeology. You like a bowl of tobacco, it takes them 2 hours. It wasn't an Olympic sport yet. So tobacco had that property of slow burning, of smouldering, but tobacco contains nicotine, which is addictive. It also contains tar, which is carcinogenic. So you've got this perfect storm where the property of tobacco made it so that it would smoulder, you got hooked on it, and then it would... So, getting back to this pipe work, reopened, rediscovered in 1989, Ironbridge Gorge Museum source grants. They got £250,000 from Brussels, from the EU, from the European Regional Development Fund. So all this money that we send over, we got a bit of it back, £250,000 to rescue this. Now these women, very nimble, very efficient. They can make between 600 and 700 pipes a day, each one, rolling out. I'll demonstrate the process for those of you who haven't seen it. So they work really hard, really efficiently. It was all made Victorian-style clay pipe. It's beautifully carved and engraved. We've got about 40 of these. A lot of them are plain, and we've also got the long one, the long church warden. You've probably heard of a church warden pipe. Lovely long cast iron mould for making the long pipe. So this is original equipment. The curator, or previous curator, was fairly modern-minded and thought, instead of locking these irreplaceable moulds up in a glass case, would I use them and demonstrate how they were used to produce clay pipes, to sort of show the context, but to obviously look after them, guard them with my life. So the making of a clay pipe, as I say, it dates back to about 1630. The local clay was used in the early days, but from about 1730 they started bringing the clay up the river on the barges from North Devon coast and North Cornwall. Cornish clay, it's got a whiter, oh that's cracking a little bit, it's too nice today. It's got a whiter body, fires to a nice white finish. If you're making the long pipes, the long church wardens, you carry on rolling. That's not coming up too cleverly, but you get a longer and longer stem, and then you'd have to thread a long wire like that down the stem to make a long church warden. That's a fairly short one. It's actually broken off, but the longer church warden, here's one I made to form the bowl, and because I'm using this fairly short cast iron mould to make the claw, the eagle's claw, here's one I made earlier. So let's pass the eagle's claw around. That's the pipe I'm making at the moment. So you get the clay, as I say, roughly the right shape, break it off at the right length, and you need a wire down the middle to make the hole, obviously. The long church warden takes quite a bit of skill and practice, and when you get to the top floor, Yes, you'll have plenty of time. There's a film up there, a 15-minute film, a black and white home movie film taken in this factory in 1938, showing a lady here in the factory, a lady called Clara Bagley, making a long churchwarden. It is an absolute marvellous piece of film. Turned up just by accident in Birmingham Museum in 1989 when they heard that this old clay pipe factory had sort of been rediscovered. Now, oiling the mould with a bit of release oil. They used what they call a sweet oil and thinned it with paraffin. The sweet oil turned out to be cooking oil, so they were using olive oil thinned with paraffin as a release agent. So I mixed this using some of my wife's cooking oil, but she said
Don't worry.
extra virgin olive oil was much too good for me, and gave me a bit of mazola, something with crude oil. So there you go. So you put the two halves of the mould into the vise, and I tell everyone this is my only vise, or at least the only one that I'm admitting to. And then you oil this stopper. This stopper will come down into the top of the mould and form the bowl. Bring down this lovely old bit of original 1880s equipment, and that forms the bowl. I'll take that out. Now that I've made the bowl down there, yes, nice and clear, I push the wire the last little bit. And the wire is just long enough to break through into the bowl, but not too long as to puncture it the other side. You obviously don't want it leaking out the other side. You trim off the excess clay in the slot like that, and open it up, and there you should have your brand new moulded pipe, your eagle's claw pipe. It's picked out the design, the pattern from the mould. It's got little rough bits, flashes that they were called, around the outside, which are trimmed off a little bit later. And at this point, I press my name stamp against the stem, and I put my name on the pipe to show who made it. The ladies in the factory here always stamp the pipe with a company name. So I take the wire out and leave that to dry. It's a nice eagle's claw pipe. It's left there to dry. Here's what I made earlier. I made that last week. That's dried out. It dries to a light grey, and now it's easier to handle, and you trim around the seams, taking off the rough flashes. Ooh, I thought I'd broken it, where the two halves of the mould came together. Because it's a claw, oh, I've just broken the claw, you clean under the claws like that, and now that's ready for firing in a kiln. It'll be placed into these containers, these round containers. These are called saggers, and you all know the story of the sagger maker's bottom knocker. Well, that's from 1952. That was a question on What's My Line? With Gilbert Harding, Barbara Kelly, Isabel Barnett, I think it was David Nixon, wasn't it? Yeah. So a sagger maker's bottom knocker. The panel had to guess the person's occupation after various questions. And he rolled out some of this lovely clay, the stoneware clay. He got a big cutter, diameter like that, like a huge pastry cutter, and you place that under the top of the clay, you'd roll onto a table and hammer it to cut out the circular base for the sagger. So he was the sagger maker's bottom knocker. So there you go. These saggers are placed in the kiln. You can have a good look at the kiln later on. It's a lovely bottle kiln built in 1881. It was an updraft kiln with a big long chimney, big tall chimney, but then it was converted to a downdraft. They blocked off the top because that was more efficient, so they built an extra extractor chimney just across the courtyard there. Now, if you pass that around, you can see that's a photograph of the pipe works, the Ranger building just across the yard in 1989, and it was pretty derelict, pretty falling down. But as I say, it was unique. It was absolutely amazing that it was still contained all the original equipment.
Have you seen a demonstration now, Charles? Have you seen?
Plenty of photographs up here.